One of the things we're doing at 8 News Now is trying to reach out to our community leaders. Brian Loft is here, and we are joined by a community leader, Sheriff Joe Lombardo. And Sheriff, we do thank you for your time.
Oh, absolutely. And, I really appreciate you doing this in this format because quite often we heads of agencies need to get out in front and talk about these type of issues to calm the public. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Well, you are getting out in front, and we appreciate you taking the time. And I want to point out 2 releases that went out from Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department today. One urging citizens to use online services to file police reports when possible. Can you expand on that and talk about the importance of it?
Well, obviously, where we're trying to create the social distancing and try to minimize human contact as we go through this crisis. That includes my records department, which has, in excess of 1,000 visitors on a daily basis. If we can minimize some of that daily contact or that need to the public, we're going to try to figure out ways to do that. And one of them is filing a report online, if at all possible. We know a lot of people don't have that ability, and we're staying open in order to accommodate people because it's important that we're aware of crimes being perpetrated and that we document that.
Sheriff, the second release talked about the cancellation of community events, from ceremonies to First Tuesday meetings to community outreach events. Again, Metro practicing that social distancing with that cancellations. But you also talked about new officer protocols in response to COVID-19. What are those new protocols for your police officers?
Well, first and foremost, we're having them practice self-discipline. In other words, self-sanitizing. Ensure that they have prophylaxis, such as rubber gloves, if they have them need to wear a mask, that they have that available to them and they use that. And then we do a decontamination post-event if needed. We're not used to doing that on a regular basis. We respond to an excess of 4,000 calls a day where we have human interaction. And some people may be aware they have COVID. They may not be aware they have COVID. But it's important for our officers to be available and not be stricken by this particular disease, so they're available for public safety.
Let's look at this from a broader issue, COVID-19, coronavirus, talking about the community. This is a time of great anxiety for so many as people try to navigate what is really uncharted territory. With all that is going on, how can you reassure our community that they are safe and that Metro is still working full force to be there to respond to anything that might happen to them or happen to their neighborhood?
Great question, Brian. I appreciate you asking that. And it's important for them to realize that their police department is working. They're out and about. They're doing what they do on a normal daily basis. That has not changed because of the situation. And it's important for public safety to provide that blanket or that perception of safety in a continual manner, so we don't create our own chaos or create chaos for people. In other words, panicking because of lack of supplies or inability to sequester themselves within their own residences, and whether people are going to cause them harm, knowing that they're in their houses instead of at work now. So it's important we don't have the luxury from working from an office. Like a lot of the recommendations that are occurring, work from home if you have that ability. We don't have that ability, so it's just as important for our officers to use precautions so they don't become a victim of the virus. So it's important for them to realize that we're out doing what we do on a normal basis, and our protocols, our reaction, and our if you call for service, we're available.
If you call for service, they're available. Great to hear that, Sheriff Lombardo. We do also want to talk about something we've covered here at 8 News Now. People with pallets of water and toilet paper, absolutely packed stores, and there are hoarding issues. And Metro really wants to address it, the issue of hoarding, especially on those in lower socioeconomic status and the impact that is having on them. What do you want to communicate to the men and women listening to this about the hoarding issue?
Well, a lot of it is done because they lacking knowledge associated with whatever the particular event is. They're thinking what they see on social media or in the news or any way they receive their information. They're seeing empty shelves in the grocery stores, and the run on water and toilet paper. becomes a concern. No matter how many times we try to preach it, it's still going to be a concern. So it's important for us to over communicate that aspect. Just recently, we were out to the distribution center that where all the grocery stores receive all their supplies on a daily basis, and those trucks are lined up, they're full, and those shelves are going to be restocked in the grocery stores. And I think it's important for us to reassure the people that it's actually happening, and it's not just us talking, trying to create calm. There will be supplies for you moving forward. It isn't like the entire county's been quarantined, and there's not been a fence put up to prevent people from delivering supplies. That's open and available, and it's going to be available. All those items will be replaced and available for when you desire it or when you need it. So there's not a real need to hoard that, because my concern is people that have the limited ability to go to stores and get supplies, people that are up in age, they have transportation issues. We're doing nothing more than hurting those folks. And there are a vulnerable population associated with the disease. People 70 plus years of age, predetermined issues, health issues. Those are our vulnerable population, and we're not doing anybody any favors by limiting availability to supplies.
Sheriff, that's a great point that you finish with there. The average age of death with COVID-19 is 81 right now. That could change. So really thinking about that population of older folks and how we can help them, not keeping supplies that they might need but cannot get. Great point there. I want to switch now to Las Vegas Boulevard. It's going to look like a different place over the next weeks, maybe months. It's going to go from a place of happiness and revelers and fully operational casinos to a different type of atmosphere. What do you do to keep it safe when it's not the normal strip, the normal Las Vegas Boulevard activity?
Well, you would think it wouldn't cause an issue. It'd be easier for us, but in fact it isn't, because the reason why it's empty is they're closing the doors and people are losing their jobs. So desperation tends to come into the equation. And we have to still have that omnipresence and ensure that people aren't contemplating doing bad things that will cause us to respond. So we're assisting. We're a force multiplier for the inherent or the in-house security at those establishments, and we'll continue that security profile moving forward. I have no knowledge of the casino industry diminishing their security personnel in light of this current crisis.
Sheriff, what are some of the biggest crimes Metro Police are dealing with right now in terms of if it's package thefts or domestic violence issues? What are the things that you guys are seeing as hot button issues during the COVID-19 crisis?
Well, it's still early, Brian. We don't have a lot of data to draw from, but what we're currently dealing with is disturbances that occur during these big long lines of people waiting in line at stores to get their perceived supplies that they need. We're dealing with keep the peace issues currently, but as far as actual criminal activity, we don't have enough data to draw from that. You would assume people becoming desperate with the loss of a job. Maybe there's a larceny or theft issues going to occur, or domestic violence issues because of people's emotional state and stress. But we have not seen that yet.
Are DUIs lower at all, being that it seems less people are driving and listening to that advice of social distancing and so many people now working from home? Is that going down?
No, you know what? I don't know if it's going down or up. In today's number, there has been no change. So we'll keep our eye on that, because you make a good point. But we're going to keep our eye on that. There's a lot less people driving. I mean, there's a lot less issues along the roadways. So we'll keep an eye on it. That's the best I can say.
Sheriff, you unfortunately have a lot of experience being a leader in crisis. You've led us through 1 October. I think it was about 7 or 8 days after 1 October, you and I sat down for an interview here at 8 News Now, and you led us through the aftermath of 1 October. What are your goals as you lead us through this? What are your goals for Metro Police, for our city, for our safety, in what is something that, as I mentioned earlier, is really unprecedented?
Yeah, great question, Brian. I mean, my goal is to keep the peace. I mean, that's what we do as a business. That's our business model, preventing harm to come upon the general public And that's my goal. My secondary goal is make sure the wellness of my workforce, make sure they're available and able to come to work, and we provide all the protections available to provide to them so they are successful at work. Because you got to remember, I also have the jail environment, so I have to deal with what's going on over there within those four walls and ensure that our safety measures are in place. We're being proactive in prevention, and that we have people available to provide that blanket of safety. So my goal moving forward for the community is ensure that we're available and we have that omnipresence, what they're looking for.
I know you're always thinking ahead. You're always looking at different scenarios and planning ahead. Are you doing that with your team right now to look at best case, worst case, and everything in between?
Yeah, in any crisis, you have the immediate need to slow the momentum. I believe the health department and the governor's office and everybody's doing with everything within their power to slow that momentum. And then we're doing everything we can to ensure that the people are taking care of each other and they're not getting out of control. So you have that initial stage, and then as you move into more long-term, the issues that are associated with long-term crisis, and then internally in the shorter term is the wellness of my employees. So I think I convoluted that answer for you, but best is you got your short-term, your medium-term, and your long-term goals, and that is the availability of my workforce to continue to provide safety for the community. And we're going to take a lot of decisions or work stance or direction based on what we see in the data. So if people are becoming very nervous and they're starting to get desperate, we're going to do the best we can to stay out in front of that and be aware of it and respond to it.
Any advice that you'd like to impart with kids not being in school, for the mom and dad watching who maybe as high school students? I know you're always looking at making sure our younger population is staying safe and staying out of trouble. Any advice you'd like to impart to those parents?
Yeah, idle hands, devil's workshop, correct? You know what it is? The advice I would give the parents is keep them busy. Teach them all the things about life skills during this time when they're not at school, and teach them how to do things like fix things around the house, continue the ability to read. People tend to keep their noses out of the computers, that kind of stuff. I think it's important to do constructive learning along the way, and the chance for the parents to be participants in that constructive learning. I think there's a lot of life skills that can be achieved during this idle time.
As the health officials say, if the numbers end up being lower than what is expected, this whole social distancing change is working. That's what we hope for. Better days ahead. As we wrap up here, is there anything else you'd like to say? Any message that we didn't get across that you want to talk to the people listening?
Well, based on that leveling out, we have to rely on the professionals to give us insight into that. I'm an expert in the criminal environment, and I also have to rely on them and provide the sound advice when it's time to do business as usual and to defer from what our current stance is, our operational mode is now. And so the advice I give to the people is patience. Please have patience. We will survive this. From what we're seeing occurring in China and South Korea and Iran, how the virus is diminishing in current numbers, we have to anticipate that's going to occur here because we're being proactive. So, but patience and rely on the experts in the field to give us good advice.
This too shall pass. Better days ahead. We appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. This entire interview can be seen for those watching on 8newsnow.com, in addition to being in our newscast. And again, Sheriff, thank you for taking the time. Stay safe, stay healthy. We appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys.